So if your spring's all compressed and twisted in there, then you've failed and you have to start again. Right, one of the first things we're going to do here is we're going to extract the throttle cable from the carb. We're going to remove all of that. Alright, so now that the fuel line's been disconnected, the cable's been disconnected, we can go ahead and loosen that right off. So they are a very similar size. This one's a little bit bulkier. The first thing I really need to do is to make sure that this is going to go on here without any real issues, because there's no point in threading anything on Alright, that is a perfect fit. It's very, very snug, and it slides pretty much all the way back up onto the end of the neck. So that is a perfect fit onto a stock intake manifold. Now I'm going to try and hold the springs in because they're sort of keeping that gasket in. So of course the first thing to do is to grab that throttle cable and slide it all the way down. Now you do want to make sure that it doesn't get caught up in the spring there and that it's nice and clear. If you've got a way to try and keep that spring compressed, then do that. So the next thing we need is of course our, where are we? Our throttle slide. So we're going to feed it through this little hole here, all the way through, bend it back up so it sits vertically at the end of this plate. Right, and this is where you're going to run into trouble because this spring has to sit. So we're going to try and throw our slide down in there. It will have to be on an almost right angle because there's only a little bit of space behind there for the cable. The arm for the choke has to be fed in first, and then try and get that spring in the best you can. So this is where I am at the moment. It's really difficult to see what's going on there, but basically I need to try and get that spring to sit on the front of that throttle slide the best I can. We're just going to go ahead and remove my airbox. So we've got our throttle assembly plate mounted, but as you can see the spring still looks pretty janky. Alright, so I'm just going to get my needle nose pliers and we're just going to try and guide that spring back up onto that plate. So if your spring's all compressed and twisted in there, then you've failed and you have to start again. So I've got my hand up on the throttle. And what we're seeing there is a fully operating throttle. Now it does take an extra twist to get that plate to clear right up, but that's mostly because of all the extra slack that I've got in this cable here. So I'm going to go ahead now and pop our janky cover back on. We're going to mount it back onto here. Actually, while I've got the camera, I will show you just what a perfect fit that is. Nice snug. Alright, so now I'm going to just, don't do what Nick does, go and find your bloody spanners. Janky! A job I've been meaning to do for a little while is replacing these cable ties on the fuel line with actual ring lamps, because I have noticed a little bit of leakage because those cable ties just aren't quite up to the task. Alright, so on the other side of here is just an Allen bolt, looks to be about 5mm, and the handy thing about that is that's all you need, because of this little profile in here will hold that nut in place while I go tighten it. So the only thing really left to do now is turn our fuel on. Uh-oh, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. We're leaking out of the fuel line, so I'm going to go ahead and replace this hose. Granted, we're not leaking fuel, but nor is it pouring in like it should. That's normally a sign that you're out of fuel, Nick, but we're not. Not quite anyway. The only thing I can really do now is get the bike up down the backyard, see if we can't get it running. So I'm not going to get it started reliably in the backyard. We had a quick fire there, and I tell you, especially for a cold start, it's revving a lot higher than it was before. So we are on a brutal COVID lockdown right now. So I'm going to go mask up, go out for a ride, and hope that if I do get stopped I can claim I was taking exercise. There goes nothing. Let it warm up before we play with the idle screw. Right, so my first impressions of the HB Carb are pretty ordinary, I'll say. It ran, yes, but it ran poorly. It felt like there was a lot of torque to begin with, and then it just died right off. The throttle's still working the way it should. The clutch plate doesn't vibrate out. Normally those are your go-tos. So I don't think there's really anything else that can be done. I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board, but I think in terms of functionality, I'll have to give this to the classic NT.